Hello, everyone. It's Gabrielle from A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to the fourth episode of Hot Topics, where we talk real talk about things that are happening in education, employment, mental health, social services, physical health, psychology, or anything else that's steamy. So we have a repeat guest today. Her name is Nathifa Lewis, and today she will talk to us about the hot topic of technology in education. So I'm going to just give you a refresher of who she is. So Nathifa Lewis is a technology and education professional with over 20 years of experience in both fields. She is also a mom of three and was recently elected as the Secretary of the Community Education District 28 in Southeast Queens. Additionally, she is a Girl Scout troop co-leader and is also a member of various community-based organizations, including a moderator of the Black Career and Employment Opportunities Facebook group. That's Black spelled BLAQUE, which is a subgroup of the Black Resource Network, which is also on Facebook. She's also the moderator of the Grenada Cultural Festival Group and the Quake USA Cultural Organization. So, Nathifa, welcome back to Hot Topics.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you for having me back.
Awesome. All right, so we had an interesting discussion about the effect of technology in schools, and I wanted to have you share your perspective on that.
Well, technology in schools this year is definitely a hot topic. We see that we've gone through a year of a pandemic, and there were some students who were severely disadvantaged because they did not have the same resources as others. And technology is a word that we tend to like throw about a lot without sometimes really understanding what it is. Technology is a tool. A lot of times we think of the physical things, the laptops or um, the desktop computers or the smart boards in the classroom. And this year we saw that technology went way beyond that. It went towards having the correct internet access to be able to access those things. It went to parents being able to help younger children with navigating Google Classroom and lots of other applications that they were being introduced to. Um, so I think, it's definitely an interesting area for me because that is my field, but it's also one that we really, really do need to look at to kind of help break those equity issues that are happening for our children.
And it was, you brought up an interesting point about what happened with the remote learning and even the access to technology. And I think with what happened, it exposed an income disparity in terms of who has access to it and who doesn't have access to it. So can you talk about do you mind talking about that and what it means for people, the have and have nots? What does that mean in terms of that income disparity?
So I think it went even beyond income disparity, and it went into social disparities because there were a lot of people who income wise would be considered middle class or so forth, but had maybe, I don't know, three children in school and were working from home, who had a completely different experience from someone who may be in the same bracket, have one child, and be a stay at home mom. So it went to being able to utilize the technology, having access to the technology, regardless of your income or support system, that came into play as well for those who were maybe first responding families and didn't have like a space to leave their 5-year-old to be able to access all these new tools that you're like shoving down their throats. It was a far cry from someone with an 8-year-old who or or one parent able to be with them, or even a sibling. Also saw is where siblings were forced to take on more responsibility for um their young ones to help them get on, and in turn was sometimes late for classes or missing things, and sometimes being called out inappropriately by teachers who did not necessarily understand what were happening. All been on those Zoom calls where you're asking, can you hear me? You're muted. See the person buffering in and out, and all of that had to do with sometimes location. Okay, did you live in um a single family house with a dedicated wide connection? We're in a building that had a lot of issues connecting to Wi-Fi because it's an old building, steel structures all over. Those things came into technology and access. And if anyone has a child with a DOED, lots of students, the 1 point how many million students in DOE, um, a lot of students are those. You would see like a whole range of um, apps that are on these devices. Did not get devices. Sometimes had issues accessing these apps. Some understand them. Could not keep up with moving from, okay, we're in Google Classroom today. Now we need to go on to I don't know, Peer Day, and we need to go on to the whatnot. So those trainings, the DOE in a somewhat belated fashion tried to address it by creating things like an online resource called Parent University. But in many cases, there was a lot, sometimes too late, or a lot, sometimes just late. Parents were frustrated. And when you've gotten people sometimes to a point where they're frustrated, it's hard to get them to get the benefits that's in there. Because there's a lot that's out there. You know what you're looking for, you can find it. You can have someone who can already record you that you can look at and teach you step by step through these things. But if your first introduction to this thing that, if you were introduced properly, love was horrible, it's going to be hard to go to the page video and it's like, okay, you've already tuned out. So I think we saw adaptability coming in there, and a lot more times on the part of the parents. Because remember, our children were feeding off of our responses. And if you as a parent are frustrated because you never got to understand new ways that the new techniques were being applied to math, it's not new math, it's new techniques. Sometimes the children who are more open to it shut down because they're piggybacking off of say, I can't understand this. So they say, I can't understand this. And then you sometimes kids who being very adaptable. You put them in and all of a sudden you have a 5-year-old who is jumping from Google Classroom on here, putting in Peer Deck, uploading pictures there, navigating their iPads, doing all these things. But a lot of the support came from being able to be fed that, okay, yes, you can do it. No, this is not too hard. No, this is not too much. And depending on the environment we're in, depending on who you have to support you when you met that one thing that was too hard, made a big difference as to how far you got.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think technology was always in schools, but I think with what happened with the pandemic, it sort of sent it into overdrive, sort of, to a point where the physical schools had to shut down, and so the remote school came into play. So I think because of that implementation, it opened new doors to education and as well created more problems. But particularly with the opening of doors, like it it was a way to address overpopulation in schools. Because I know schools in New York are notoriously overpopulated. So So the remote learning, it adjusts
Um,
those issues.
I have mixed feelings on that. Having 30 kids online in a remote session because you could only have 20 in school does not solve an overcrowding population, because more importantly is how are the teachers able to give the each kid the individual attention that they need. And when both the technology is new, often sometimes for the teacher as well as students, more kids in a class does not make it easier. It's sometimes actually easier to have classroom management of 30 kids physically in class than online. Online, they were actually sometimes recommending that it doesn't go past 15 or 20. I mean, if you look at those Google Meet and Zoom screens and so forth, most of them don't allow you to have more than the default view is not more than about 10 or so um, students at a time. So what's going on with the kid who's off screen? In a physical classroom, you can see, little Tommy at the back is struggling. His face is completely, oh my goodness, I don't get this. On screen, where a lot of kids already were struggling sometimes with bandwidth issues, they were not turning on their cameras, rather because they couldn't or because they just didn't want to. Um, it's hard to see that. So in some ways, yes, it did help address access, because you know what? Um, you could be at home and accessing this. You could be sometimes at the babysitter or at grandma's or whatever it is and accessing your work in a way that you couldn't. There are students who went to foreign countries. Um, but it did not address being able to individually identify what this child needs, especially if one of the kids was not a visual um, or even auditory learner. So they're looking at this and they're spaced out because they're very tactile. They need someone who's with there and literally showing them and then doing it again. And that's different from sometimes watching a video of someone doing it and doing it again. So it showed a lot of disparities in terms of how kids learn, but it also opened opportunity for us to explore different technologies, because there are different ones that work with different people. Um, Catering for our students with low vision and even our teachers and so forth with low vision. Schools were forced to have um, applications and apps and devices or so forth that allowed them to have maybe auditory sound in addition to just whatever was visually put on there. We got a lot of complaints from parents at the beginning when teachers were just posting a bunch of busy work without explanation or with poorly recorded or written up explanation, and then telling kids go do it. Parents were like outraged. So it forced people to really look at the techniques of how you disseminate information, how you get someone to engage and learn how to move from point A to point B in steps. And a lot of that helped to kind of drive technology. As like I always say, technology is just a tool. Okay, so um, in centuries ago, just a pen and a paper was a form of technology, because before you had to either memorize and be able to verbally tell things. So that ability to transfer and document and keep things on paper was a tool. As we get more advanced, so now, okay, then you had typewriters. Now we have computers. Now, in addition to that, we have videos and audios, and we have touch screens, and we can touch stuff, and we can write math, and we can do lots of different things. But understanding the limits of the tool is important. A tool is only as smart as who built it, one, and what it is meant to do.
Right, right. And I mean that's a fair point. It's how one technology may work for one person and may not work
Work
for a
for another.
different person. And then and particularly with schools, there's a lot of different personalities and learning styles and then also like personal issues at home. So there's a lot of different backgrounds. So applying that one technology to everybody is of course going to have its own issues. So now what does it mean for, you know, that technology in schools being applied to the younger kids who are still kind of in that their brain, like their brains are still forming in a way. So how does it work for the
For the
like
younger
the three,
kids,
yeah, the 3-year-olds, the
the 3 and the 4 year
4-year-olds?
olds. I
Yeah,
mean,
how would
look,
that work for them?
kids are remarkably adaptive. Um, they say, some of the most of your learning literally happens in the first 8 years of your life, and the biggest bulk of that actually happens between 0 and 2. And it's kind of funny. Like I like to look at little babies. When you give them a phone, what do? If you have a child who was born in like the 80s or the 90s, you see the first thing that they do with a phone is they take it and they put it to their ear, and they start trying to say hello, or their little goo goo gagas. Um, you give that to a child who's born in the 2000, and especially the 2010s and onwards. The first thing they do is they're looking at the phone. The phone is in their hands and they're touching and moving or so forth, because that has become almost innate to them. I don't like to put in all those classifications like digital learners versus this or so forth. To me, it's a matter of nurture. So me being in technology, I know my kids were exposed to, being on the laptops and whatever it is. So they're gonna mimic what they see. And these 3 and 4 year olds surprisingly can show you a lot about some of the technology. What to me became the bigger issue is that some of the traditional tactile skills, holding the pencil properly, being able to learn the letter formation and so forth, that you did not have as much control of, because you're just touching and selecting letters on screen, um, is being lost, and we have to address those things. Um, as they went older, I think the balance became more important, because you don't want to overburden a child. There are lots of studies out there as to how much screen time a child should have, in a continuous goal. And I think DOE did, at least by the beginning of this past school year, try to implement some of that. So you saw that the time increased, whether you were a preschooler versus a elementary school student in, I don't know, third grade, versus whether you're a fifth grader, versus whether you're a high school student. Um, you saw that it went up incrementally, the amount of time that they were recommended to be able to like sit and try to work on a task, the amount of physical activity that they needed to have in between. And you had some teachers who adapted to this virtual learning in such a wonderful way that they found creative ways to keep the kids engaged, to not lose any of them. And then some others were themselves going through a lot of turmoil, because this was so new to them that they were losing the kids from the time they said good morning. Just from the dejected ways, like, I don't want to be here. The kids pick up on that. And I think that is part of it. Like, as a kid, I had the experience of feeling there wasn't anything that I couldn't do. And I think in this time, you have to kind of cultivate that in the kids as they get exposed to this technology. Um, but really, really tailor it. Look at the studies. Look at, um, do feedback after, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, in teams. Observe other teachers, see what's working, see what isn't, and help to apply it. Because yeah, it was hard for I'm I'm thankful, I guess, that my youngest kids were 10 in this period, because I could not imagine working full time and trying to navigate, as I have twins, and trying to navigate, I don't know, twin 5 year olds. It would have been a disaster for me.
I would I would imagine so. So what about sort of, because I feel like technology makes things easier for us, but I feel like at the same time, because it's easier for us, it's sort of it makes us lazier in a way.
Well, I
Because
mean, a tool should help you, yes, it should help you do something better. If a tool is making you do more work just to use the tool, then you need a new tool. And so, yeah, technology does allow us to do certain things easier. Okay, so yes, I mentioned the younger kids not maybe having to form out the A or whatnot, being able to identify, oh, this is A and pressing it on a button, or this is C or whatnot. And what technology to me should be allowing you to do um, is to take the time that you've saved by doing it easier to dive down a bit deeper into the comprehension. Okay, so this is A. Look at how it's formed. Okay, because now you're not spending as much time with them talking about okay how to form it. It's formed. Now look at how it is. How do you identify it? Which other letters look like that? How do you know? So you technology should allow you to change the part. It shouldn't make you lazy. It should just say, okay, you know what? This is the busy work. We have taken care of the busy work by doing it for you or by having a tool that can do it for you. So now let's understand what this tool is helping us to do. Okay? Long time ago, before cars, people walked everywhere. Then they had bicycles, they had whatever else. Now you can get from one country to another, one place to another in a quicker time. Um, does that make you lazy? Not necessarily. It means that now you have more time to do things where you were and where you're going without having to cater such a long time to go just a short distance. So it's the same thing with technology. Use the tool to allow you to dive down deeper to get more in depth. You don't have to necessarily cover more material, but you can go more in depth and understand. I think one of the issues sometimes with the way that a lot of courses are taught in modules is that the students never get chance to go deep enough. As soon as you've like touched the surface of a part, if you get derailed with an interesting conversation in a class, by the next class you realize, oh, I'm running out of time. I have to do this because it's going to be marking period. Okay, use the technology so that you know what the stuff that would have taken me half an hour to get done can be done in 10 minutes. So now I have 20 more minutes to have that interaction, to have that um, question and answer, to let the kids get in groups and sort it out for themselves.
Well, with that, like even using your car example, we
Mm.
used to walk everywhere and now we drive everywhere. So now that we drive everywhere, physically, we're not moving. And so because we're not moving, we're not physically active. We are unhealthier. We're getting
Right,
sick. We're getting sicker. So
right.
not that I want to walk everywhere, but I'm just saying, like, because we have cars and trains and planes, it's like, you
So
know,
now though, but now you have a million and one different types of exercise programs and focus on um, diet and nutrition and fitness and the body and being able to work on your arms versus on your legs. And then the person who had the broken foot but still wants to stay active can do upper body exercise while their foot is healing, whereas while you're walking. So this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not that you have to necessarily get lazier. You have to sometimes maybe be more creative, or you have the opportunity to explore more. Okay, some people walking was a chore. Okay, maybe you had a heart issue, maybe that extra physical exertion, but having being able to do those exercises. The same thing to me applies in education with technology. A lot of times teachers were forced to just rush through the curriculum because state testing is coming, or all of these other artificially marked parts of learning. um, Most kids this year had the opportunity in a well-formed program to work like some of those more independent schools where students have these like customized curriculum for them. They're going out and they're learning at a pace that makes sense. Um, it didn't happen for everyone. Yes, some people got left behind, but in a utopian application of all the technologies that we have, of the model that we're in. And this part, I guess, is a bit exciting to me because, as I mentioned, one of my studies is in technology and education. I've been all but dissertation for way too long. Um, and this was one of the focuses of it, using technology, one as a mentoring tool, and to capture students who may otherwise fall into the cracks. Okay. this pandemic really showed out those cracks. So I think our question and our responsibility now is to find out, okay, how do we address those cracks? And I love analogies, so I'm sorry if you hear me inserting a lot of it. So going away from my car one and going to like a house one now. One of the other things we saw a lot of people doing over this pandemic was home repairs, because people are now inside their houses and they're looking up at the ceiling and seeing these cracks that they didn't see before and all of the things, and all of a sudden you got people painting and you got people doing all these things. Do the same with our education. Okay, all of a sudden the kids who just weren't showing up to school, and they were being mislabeled as, oh, they're not interested or whatnot. Now you're trying to get them on with technology and you're seeing, oh, wait a minute, this person has the tool because they were given that and they're there. Okay, all right, so what was the issue before? Why weren't they there? Is it because they have a parent who is working three jobs and not able to get them ready in time? They have younger siblings that they're taking into three different directions, but now everybody's at home, they're on. And then you had some who were thriving in the physical classroom, and now at home, you can't get anything. And you try to figure out, okay, well, what is it? Is it an uncomfortable situation there? Is there some other issues that need to be dealt with? And the technology, the metrics, the analytics, all of that are tools that we just need now to figure out how do we best work with them to make sure that we best serve each child. Because what's right for my son is different from what's right for my daughters. What's right for one of my twin daughters is different from what's right from the other. When you put that to, and it's not just 1.5 million students, that's 1.5 million DOE students. You add in the private school students, the charter school students, all of these other students. Okay, there's a lot of data that we've gathered over this year. There's a lot of technology that we've thrown out. Some of them, it is worthless. A lot of it is good. Some of it is misapplied. So now we need to really go back to the drawing board and figure out what worked, what didn't. Do those analysis and move forward.
And I see that. And you bring up a lot of good points, but then of course with technology, there's more things that have to be addressed. And there's
Right.
also the long-term effects of it. And even going back to children, it's, you have to think about their development and is it
Is it
um
adversely affecting them and everything? Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, look, there's a lot of people who um, don't allow their kids to watch TV. And then now they were forced in this last year to put them in front of a screen, and not even normally the size of a TV screen, but much smaller screens, um, for hours for a day. Okay, we're not going to see, unfortunately, a lot of these long-term effects for years. Um, that's the scary part of this. And this is why, as I said, like quick analysis, quick reviews of, whether it's monthly, whether it's weekly, whatever it is, having all of these things is important. We're getting so much data, and it's unfortunate, but it is the way that science works. Our kids right now, yes, they're being used as guinea pigs. And honestly, it doesn't sound good when you put it that way, but that is what is happening, because we throw in a lot of technology at them. We're learning some of it works, we're learning some of it doesn't. It will help guide policies and programming for future generations. The overall effects on our current students is still being analyzed. But the best that we can do is to make sure that we are kind of trying to put a support system around each child so that we can see how it's affecting you or me or this other child at this point in time, and do the best that we can if we see something going the wrong way to correct it. But yeah, the long-term effects, um, from a scientific and experimental point of view, is exciting. There's lots of things that's coming out. From a humanitarian point of view, it's scary.
And even like the loss of like basic skills. I think I remember reading somewhere that um I mean, this is in regards to like texting, but it's like because kids are texting more, they can't like hold a pen properly
As
or
much.
something like that, or like
Right.
they don't have like the hand formation.
Right.
So, I mean, I know we're in a digitized world, so how many things will you be writing by hand really? But like it'll like simple things like that.
Right. And again, as I said, it's the modification of the skills that are most important to us. And this is why like the introduction of tech cannot occur in a vacuum. Along with the technology support and the instructional support, you need to have the occupational therapist and all of those other hands-on services. And thank goodness there's a lot of things that are being moved back to in person, because I do know um, people in those fields who were doing virtual parts, and it's hard, especially if it's with a younger kid or newer kid. How you can try to look, if you have a really good camera, at how a child is holding on to a pen, and then forming this, but it's not the same sometimes as being in the room and helping them do it, showing them how to do it. You're actually using different skills. um but I mean, I do throw the losing the skills bit back at, like, okay, how many of us know how to create a fire with I don't know, two rocks or something like that? um it's a skill that many of our ancestors had, but because we have matches and lots of other lighting tools right now, um it's a skill that if you really really wanted, you're an Eagle Scout or whatever else, you can go out and find it. But we're not using it day to day, so losing it is not necessarily as um big a deal as it may be. Of course, that's not the same as necessarily being able to hold a pen. But you also have to look at the fact that, yes, most times these days, what are we using the pens for? For signing our names or things like that. So I think it's important to, yeah, make a note of the things that we're not doing as much, and have at least some occasional parts, so that at least you're familiar. You're probably not gonna have as many people who, unless they're into calligraphy or something, having the beautiful penmanships that some of us were forced to have in high school, because otherwise you got all the red marks across your paper. But it's, to me, it's a transference of skills. You don't need to do this now, but you need to be able to navigate your computer. You need to be able to save your work. You need to be able to upload it. Those were things that the people with the beautiful penmanship never even heard of or wouldn't be able to do today, or the older ones who learned that way are sometimes having troubles with. So it's sometimes it becomes a apples and oranges comparison. But that's why it's important um to do like a holistic review, I guess, of what is going on. And I think that's why, in addition to all the tech and stuff being thrown at it, all of the major school districts, so the DOE, and throughout the country, have been really hinting at social emotional learning and all of those kind of things, because technology is there, but the technology has to be supported by the wider and the holistic view of the child. Okay, you can only really benefit from using a tool if the rest of you is also taken care of.
And that's a very fair point. So what about I guess the argument that all this technology, even especially in kids, is kind of blocking like human connection, and that, like we're not really socializing as much, where, we're more lonely because we're not really interacting, we're on our computers. What do you say to that?
I mean, it works for some and it doesn't work for others. And you have to know yourself. I'm talkative. I like the human connection, but also being someone in tech, there's a lot of people who I grew up with that I still maintain connection with, but I'm not gonna see, I haven't seen them in years. I haven't, I saw some people a couple months ago because I traveled, that I haven't seen in maybe 15 years. But we were not necessarily estranged because of technology, because we were able to follow each other on social media. We were able to interconnect in those kind of ways. With the kids, I have three kids, and they're very different kids. My son is very quiet. He is into his video gaming or so forth. But in the middle of him playing some of the games at the times when I'm trying maybe to get him to go to bed, you would never think he was a quiet kid because he's on there and he's communicating with his friends. So I think yes, we're developing different ways of communicating, and it may not be as intrinsic to us who grew up being able to go outside and play and jump and run. And this is why even video game creators and so forth are trying to incorporate these things. That's why you had like the Wii Fit. You can, some kids who may never have played tennis or whatever else because maybe they felt more socially awkward or weren't as athletic or so forth and would have gotten left back on the field. But were great video gamers are now playing and learning the skills. And then sometimes if they even get into the game enough that they decide to bring it back outside. So, I mean, to me, again, it's all about how you apply it. And I always go back to technology as a tool. So finding the tool to support your lifestyle to help support your child where that child is. If your child is very is very introverted, um, being able to express themselves online may allow a kid who, especially if they have the option for anonymous things or so forth, may allow them to do it. If you have a kid who really does not like a lot of exercises or so forth, trying to find something that they like. I remember I used to be cracking up when I'm trying to work and my kids are having gym, and it's these kind of contests where I think like they may have to make a vote on something, and if they chose if they chose the left hand, then they have to run in place for 10 minutes, or if they chose the other thing, then they may have to do burpees on the ground or whatnot. So there are creative ways that um even pre-recorded content can allow you to still become interactive. So it comes to the application. I'm probably biased because I'm in the technology field. But I think that there are way more pros than cons to it, especially like as people go through safety, as they're concerned about the upsurges. And now we're talking about new Delta variants and all these other things with the virus. Some people are just physically not ready to get back out there and be social and be hugging and be whatever else. And if you've drummed in your kid for the last year, don't hug, don't touch, keep your mask on or whatnot, um, it does affect their ability to feel comfortable to do social interaction. And technology is like to me, a bit of a bridge. You want to keep that middle part. You don't want them to become so into the technology that they don't know how to work with others. But at the same point in time, you don't want to dismiss the technology or put it all into the bad thing. You don't punish a child necessarily by, oh, well, you know what? Taking away your technology. Okay, you know what? You can't have your technology. I'm going to give you a book. That's bad because now you're trying to you're associating. Okay, if you're physically reading a book with something bad, and your iPad was something good. All right. Whereas sometimes they were reading on the iPad. There's some kids who didn't want to read the physical books and they were reading on there. So you create, I don't know, ways of positively motivating them to do the things that they would have done physically, learning how to skip. All these kids now they're into the TikTok videos and whatnot. Many schools are jumping on the bandwagon and teaching complicated um, life skills in the means of that, because you see them doing all those intricate dances and stuff like that with no part. So when they bring that into some kind of a science lesson or whatnot, it sticks in the same way. So I think it's a matter of understanding that our children's minds might be functioning a little bit different than ours may have, and trying to adapt to them, trying to support them, not dismissing any the value of the old school skills, but finding ways to mix and match, meet people where they are, and then show them the benefit of, oh, but this is also good. because I bring back up the TikTok part. I see my kids would come um, singing some song that I know I knew as a kid. I'm like, where you heard that? And then I realized it's from a TikTok video. And these are some of the ways that a lot of things are being remade and reintroduced. So it's a matter of repurposing so that they don't lose the skills. And at the same time, keeping an open mind that, you know what, yeah, every generation is going to have that part of, in my day, we did this way. We have it that our parents and our grandparents are going to complain about things that we do this way. So we have to remember that part. We were young once and we found that anything that our parents or grandparents did was old school or not the way we want to do it. And then there's that thing we turn out fine. Some people turn out fine with a lot of issues. So you want to address the issues, yes, but you don't want to stifle it and say it must be done that way. Be open to the ways that they are creating a new world for themselves.
And even with technology, like it's still, then there's the maintenance part. Like there has to be Wi-Fi available and
Right.
it has to be functioning, or else if it malfunctions, then that's it. And then even with like some of the virtual sessions that I had with students, there was like almost always the issue of faulty Wi-Fi and whether they had it or not. And then it comes down to access. They may not have it in the house, so they have to go to a school, they have to go to a library. So while yes, it is a tool, it's also, do you have access to that tool? And
Right.
if you don't have access, then, it
So,
becomes a
so this
struggle.
is, look, I grew up in the Caribbean, and one of the things I would say that helped us to be is a little bit innovative because, when we were doing exams and doing some of our labs, there was always something that maybe was not as easily accessible because a lot of things were built off of the first world countries. So what it kind of helps you sometimes to do is to become creative. There were sometimes parts that you need to either use your um, imagination or whatever it is and come around. This should not be what is the base for our kids, but this is where it goes back to programming. Okay. Yes, if ideally every kid should have, whether it's a laptop or the things, if you're going to be moving virtual, we identified that not all of them got it, or those some people were on the wait list for the entire year. Okay, you should have alternatives, ways of doing some of the same activities on pen and paper. There was the issue with pen and paper in the height of the pandemic where they were trying to avoid having to distribute anything or so forth. Means of sending packages to the house, which means that if you're doing certain programming, and then you're catering for kids not being able to access or having faulty Wi-Fi, it dealt with you pre-planning so that you can get these things to them or have some way that they can pick up or things like that. So that part to me is less on the technology and on the program administration, on, as you mentioned, the access, the equity. Okay, DOE says that its motto is equity for all, but we saw first and foremost that no, there was not equity for all. Okay. So yes, you want to create ways of doing that. You do not you have to create ways of not penalizing a child who through no fault of their own cannot get the same things that the other kid is getting, but then still be able to find creative alternatives for them to be able to study the same skills, be able to master the same things, because we did it without technology. Technology is a tool. Okay, I can ride my bike down the street, you can walk down the street. In some cases, in the middle of traffic, I mean, I work in Manhattan. Walking some places in Manhattan gets you there a lot faster than taking the car. So if the car is the technology, sometimes the walking works just as well. We have to find those ways in there, and that also goes to like some of the teacher education programs and so forth, that they I think some teachers are overwhelmed with the forced professional developments and whatnot. So it shouldn't be like professional development just to have professional development or because it's mandated. It should be like a more programmatic look. Um, some schools are very well at like partnering teachers together, having like grade level discussions, having subject level discussions as to what's working. And all of that helps them to better support the child, because there is that the more you sometimes collaborate, the more you're able to answer the questions about what about the kid without this, what if the internet goes off, what if all of these things, um I know all city agencies were required to have a continuity of operations plan or coup plan for their employees. Okay. This is one of my questions. Okay. What are the continuity of operation plans for education, whether it's for DOE, whether it's for charter school, whether it's for whatnot? And all of these plans are supposed to identify what happens to the kids who do not have access to what is the ideal. Okay, we ordered the laptop for you in September, it's December and it's not here. Are you missing 3 months of school, or what was the alternative for you? Okay, those are the ways that you supplement your technology. You make sure. We've all seen sometimes, even online, that you look at an image and maybe you're on your phone or you're on a really slow connection and you don't see the image. The image never comes up for you. But you can read, you know what image was supposed to be there because there's little text that says picture of a beach or something like that. So maybe you don't get the exact picture of what's in there, but you haven't lost everything, that you just have absolutely no idea what's not supposed to be there. And these are the contingency plans that we have to put in place for kids who are not able to get the access as quickly as needed. And then when you're grading, okay, you can't grade on, okay, what's the color of the sand and the beach, and is there a red umbrella? You can grade on something like, okay, what is shown on this corner of the screen, and it's a picture of a beach. Whether you saw the picture because you have the technology and the bandwidth, you know it's a picture of a beach, or if you had the slow bandwidth, or you had a printed picture, there is that little X there that says, this is a picture of a beach. So you can still say that. Those are ways that you can kind of help to equalize the playing field, for lack of a better term.
So you're saying when it comes to equity, to put more of the responsibility on the school, on the institution, as opposed to the person itself.
Yeah, and so I there's a school of thought, and I'm gonna shout out one lady who to me is doing a lot as far as that, as helping support students. Venus Ketchum, and one of the things she says is like every child is brilliant, okay? And she suggests like testing for every child, not because you're thinking that something is wrong with every child, but to find the best way to individually support them. When you think of like the DOE system or any student in New York, they have the opportunity, if they need support, to get an IEP or individualized education plan. Within this can support whether you need speech therapy or whether you need lots of things. If we work towards like getting each child evaluated, not necessarily just for services, but for needs, doing a needs assessment of what each child needs, okay, that allows you to better help support them. That cannot be the parent's responsibility. The parent has to partner with the school, with the Department of Education, with whether it's from the state level because you may be in a private school or from a public school or whatnot. The parent has to partner. But you have many parents who are immigrants who do not speak English, who may not have had a post-secondary education, may not have even had a secondary education. Um, and these parents may not know what to ask for. So this is why, okay, as the certified individuals being paid the big bucks to educate the children, the responsibility has to be primarily on the school, on the education system. Of course, parents can need to support. Of course, they need to be involved. Um, you know, some parents can be a blocker to it because some students were thriving in physical school because when they were in there they were without like the parents distracting them or not supporting them in that way. But a partnership is ideal, but without a partnership you should still be able to identify which students are struggling, which students needs are not being met, because you have professionals who have studied this, who have studied how to identify gaps in students' learning, who have studied the tools and techniques that work for particular things. And these are the people that are being hired by the education department at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level. These are the people who are being appointed as the principals and the superintendents and whatnot. So now we have to hold them to their jobs. And their jobs is to make sure that our children learn. Whether I am a involved parent or not is going to help determine how easy that job is. But the fact is, just because I'm an absent parent or whatnot, my child should not still be just lost in the system.
All right, that's a very good point. Very good point. All right, so I just want to bring it back a little bit to in the school itself with the kids. So there may be another issue of because of the Google Classroom and the Zoom and the video chat platforms, as well as using apps more. Going back to you saying that it's a tool, tools can also be manipulated, and it could also you could also get around it, so,
Right.
and I think that um like with I'm trying to think, like I remember there was one story of there was a teacher that had all the homework on an app, and the kids figured out that if you give it a low score on like the Apple store, it'll be deleted. So it's like how do you deal with that kids can figure out that I can manipulate this, I can get around this. Like, yes, we're on a video chat, but that doesn't mean I could, even my niece and nephew, like they're on Google Classroom and they're playing Roblox at the same time and they're watching YouTube at the same time. So how do you deal with the sneakiness of our youth?
Listen, um, I was a mischievous kid. I love mischievous kids because it takes brain power to be mischievous. So a lot of it has to be kind of redirected. Um, if kids can get to the point of deleting your app so they don't have to do that homework, I say power to you. But now, okay, you got this deleted. Maybe that means that you are at that stage. Maybe now you have to work together with me to create an app that will work for you. Like I like the idea of like turning some of these the mischief that kids do into positive ways of applying because they have the skills. So it's a matter sometimes of redirecting where these skills are being applied. And and again, it goes with just the same way that we're moving from pen and paper to online. You have to rethink. You can't just take a paper test and put it online. I teach mainly higher ed, and in higher ed there are a million and one tools like lockdown browser and responders and plagiarize and so forth to basically uh, basically police students' work. So you can do lockdown browser when you're doing exams, so that students can only go to that particular browser. They can't open anything else to cheat. You can use responders and so forth. You can use plagiarize to compare what they're giving you back to what's out there in like a very large database. When I'm giving my test, I don't use any of it. Why? Because I decided that I prefer to focus on them, like asking questions. Like there's going to be a couple recall questions that, yes, you know what? Honestly, you could go out there and grab those answers. It's going to take you more time because maybe you don't have as much time in there, unless you know where to look in the first place. But that's also a skill that we're teaching. Okay, if you don't know something, how do you find it? But then what instead I do is I have some questions that are more application based that You have to think about it, and there's no way that you're going to go and find that answer. Okay. You have to modify your stuff. You can use, if it's an online quiz or so forth, doing things like randomizing questions. So you know what, you and your friend are doing your questions. Oh, we're going to do our questions together. You could be sitting right next to each other looking at each other's things. You're not going to be getting the same set of questions, or maybe you get the same set of questions but in a completely different order. So if you just cheating based on, okay, number one is A, and okay, A, whatever it is, somebody's going to probably get a very good score and somebody another one. And then there are ways sometimes of realizing that, like two exact same answer sheets, all of these things. So I think um, admitting that kids are creative and catering to that. You can't be lazy as an educator in this time. You have to acknowledge that, look, any system that's out there, somebody's going to try to break it. And it's one of those things, like there are things that my kids do, and you have to talk to them sternly and give them the face, because and teach them why it's wrong. But silently, sometimes behind, you're secretly proud. It's like, yeah, okay, I see how your brain is doing, and then find ways to work with that. That's my take on some of these things. It's not, don't find ways to punitive to, oh, we're gonna make sure that they can cheat. Okay, why are they cheating? One, it's sometimes either too easy. Two, they realize you're being lazy and reusing stuff. Three, it's a challenge for them. And, unfortunately, the world we're in rewards people for these kind of things. When Apple creates a new device, okay, there's a challenge to be able to break it. The first kid who breaks it gets that, and a promise of a job down the line. There's lots of these things. So you have to understand the world we're looking in. Like, lots of people who are out there hacking and stuff like that, some of them are just doing it for the fun of it. Okay, you have people, and then they get recruited by people who have other agendas, whether political or financial or whatnot. So why not, in the positive realm, give them the incentives to do the skills, but in a positive way? Okay, these are the problems. Let's see how you can solve it, how you can get around it, how you can crack that code, make it into a fun game with positive reinforcement, so that when they do it, it's not something that they need to now be penalized for, but it's something that you can celebrate and go to the next stage, and then maybe discuss, okay, what was learned from it. um because, yeah, trust me, I mean, if if a kid ends up being able to get my app deleted, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be secretly proud of that kid.
And yeah, it's definitely there's pros and cons to technology and education, and I guess my kind of wrapping it up here. So my last question to you, like, do you think there is such thing as too much technology?
Yes. I think everything in moderation, just as you can eat too much food, you can do too much exercise, everything, no matter how good, you can overuse it. Okay, and this is why, I apologize if my background got a little noisy. This is why, um, as the kids from the younger age, you need less, because you do have to work on those tactile skills. By the time you're in elementary or so forth, there's certain skills that a 2 or 3 year old is just learning. Like, as you mentioned the holding the pencil, you mentioned forming the letters, you mentioned all these different things that at the time you're 6 and 7, you don't have to worry about. So, yes, you can go more in depth into the technology. And then, even as an adult, like, you need a break. I work on the computer multiple days and, multiple hours a day. And even myself, like, there have been time, especially in the past year, when I'm coming from one meeting. So I'm on a Zoom meeting, then I'm on a Teams meeting. Today I missed a meeting. Um, and you need a break, and you take that one day, and I don't know, you go to the park, or you read a physical book, or you just sleep, and you get back up feeling so refreshed. Okay, so able to tackle the things that was taking, I don't know, 5 hours to do this one paragraph of work. You took a nap, and then you knock it off in 10 minutes. um this happens to us as adults, so imagine what happens with the kids. There's a time that you get overloaded. Okay. They need consistency. They need to be able to explore. They need not only rules about, okay, what you can do, they need to sometimes be given a guideline of what you can do with something and given free time to explore. And yes, they need some downtime. It's a struggle for me sometimes with my son because if he can sit on the computer for, from the time he awakes to the time he sleeps, he'll do that. Um, so you have to balance it out. You have to find what's right for one versus one versus the other. For me, it's always interesting to see those differences, especially with my twins. um but within the school system, that balance has to come from sometimes from the top. Okay, this is where like the guidance and so forth going. You had the New York City system, I think, is one of the most rigorous in the country. um and they have requirements for their educators. You can't get into the classroom without certain certifications. You can't do that. And to get those certifications, you've gone through a lot of these courses. You've taken at least a minimum that talks about, some of these kind of things, classroom management, balances, and so forth. This is the time to apply them. And as a parent, if you realize that, okay, you know what, and it happens to me, I think, especially with older kids who have different teachers. With one teacher, sometimes it's easier to stay balanced because they're doing all their management. If you have older kids who have different classes, sometimes what happens is the teachers are not talking to each other. So your child's doing, I don't know, math with one teacher and ELA with another and social studies with another and then science with yet another. If each of these teachers are acting as though their tech time and their screen time is only for them, your child is going to be overwhelmed. And if you have a talkative child, you're going to hear about it pretty quickly. If you have a quieter child, sometimes as a parent, you're not going to hear about it. But if you're on top of their work and maybe finding out, okay, what do you have for homework or whatnot, you can realize this. And this is a point to reach out and say, maybe first to the teacher and say, okay, I notice XYZ is happening. You don't get a response, you reach out to whether it's the parent coordinator or the principal or whatever it is. You're not getting a response at the school level, go deeper. But that's why it takes a village, it takes communication. But the fact is, there should be a default standard that whether you're there or not works for your kid.
And then what about the idea of that technology can be addictive to kids?
It is. It's addictive to adults. I mean, as much as I love it and it has provided me with a lot of opportunities, resources, and connections, I spent way too much time on Facebook in the last year. I haven't spent maybe as much on some of the other social media platforms. With kids now, whether it's the TikTok or so forth, yeah, it's addictive. Anything that you like, whether it's gaming, that can become addictive. And technology is easy to get addicted to, especially if it's something that you're just consuming that doesn't take much besides like a thumb just moving or a finger just swiping. It becomes very easy to become addicted. And this is where the people who are um, guiding you, the people who are responsible for facilitating your classes, the people who are responsible for you are supposed to be on top of that because as a kid with less self-control, you're not going to do it. I like it. I want to do more. I want to do more. I want to do more. You see it with little kids. You tell them, okay, it's time to come out of the pool or whatever it is, and they'll stay there and become like a shriveled up wrinkle. There's a point in time when you have to step in as a parent and take them out. You have to do the same sometimes with the technology. I had to turn off like the internet at certain times with my son. Like I told him, okay, get off at a certain time, and he's not doing it. And I speak to him once, twice, it becomes an argument, and I'm like, okay, you're not gonna do it, then I'll do it.
Right. So there comes a point where you may have to be the one to step in
Step in,
and turn
right?
it off. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So do you have any advice for the people out there, for people, who have to navigate this new world of technology, or maybe they know about it, but, kids can get around, like any any final advice you want to give to our viewers?
I would just say technology is a tool. I keep repeating, technology is a tool. It is not something to be scared of. It is not something to be used as a crutch. So it's not going to solve your issues. Neither is it supposed to make them worse. Tools are supposed to help us. If a particular technology is not working for you, reach out when it's in the realm of education, whether that is to the teacher, to the principal, to the district, whatever it is. If you need a technology that you're not there, that will make it easier for your child's life to for your child to succeed, do the same. Okay, you were promised a device in August and you just keep not hearing anything, reach out at the higher levels, come to all the different meetings, go to your CC meetings, bring it up there, go to the other education council meetings, join your PTA, be part of your school leadership teams, be part of whatever else, and bring your concerns. Understand what your child is doing, understand the technology. You don't have to become an expert at it, but at least get an idea of what it does, so that if your child says, I need help, you may say, look, I can't help you, but I can reach out for you. Talk to other parents. Okay, more often than not, whatever concerns you're having, someone else is having. And having that thing makes it, like we have that tendency not to want to ask certain questions because we don't want to feel stupid. Okay, when you realize that, okay, you know what, this is not only my issue, this is five people's issue, you no longer feel stupid. Okay, reach out, use the tools, let the tools help you. Anytime a tool is not helping you, it is time to change that tool. If you can change it yourself, that's sometimes fine. But a lot of times when it comes to our kids' education, you can't change it yourself. So you have to reach out to the higher ups to make sure that they can change it for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was just awesome. All right. So if you are a DOE parent, you could sign up for the mailing list and attend the meetings of your respective community education council. You could sign up for the council in District 28 specifically, if you're interested, at www.cecd28.org/contacts. And if you happen to be in the Queens area, Queens, New York, and you're on Facebook or Instagram, you could check out the Black Resource Network and its subgroups. Again, it's BLAQUE. And the Black Resource Network has over 15,000 members, and it's focused on connecting its members with education, career, and wealth building resources through connecting and sharing. And all this contact information will be provided in the bio. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. And thank you, Nathifa, for coming back to Hot Topics. And please check out our YouTube channel for more videos and clips. And don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next time. Thank you again. Signing off. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.